What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Scouting Combine here on the Five Reasons Sports Network. I'm joined by my co-host Eric Smith. Coach, how are we doing today?
Hey, doing well. I mean, I know the season hasn't gone the way that we had all hoped. We'd all, hoped this game didn't matter because we're already in the playoffs. But I know that I can say that from my perspective, and as much work as we've done with the content on the Dolphins, I'm glad that we're still playing a meaningful game at the end of the season here, and that we still got a little bit of hope for the playoffs, and that we're not just playing a game for the hell of it.
Yeah, it looks like that Tyler Huntley is in line to start quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. In today's presser with the media in the locker room was pretty much saying, I can pretty much play. I'm good to go. It's just, the medical staff hasn't cleared me. And if the Dolphins are able to get a win against the Jets and somehow Carson Wentz turns back the clock to 2018 and beats the Denver Broncos, the Miami Dolphins are in, likely facing the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo once again in the playoffs in cold weather. But first, they have to win against the Jets, and they better hope that Carson Wentz is able to deliver. The other big story is pretty much what's going to happen if the Dolphins lose this game. Like, Black Monday's around the corner. Uh, People's are kind of changing their mind on Tua, and Chris Greer might not last long from what the rumor mill is saying.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, everybody's got their own opinions on it. I think it's a toss up as to what happens. I think the Tua stuff is obviously a little bit of recency bias with him being injured once again, but definitely seems like he wants to play, and the team is the ones that are holding them back. As far as Chris Greer goes, I think there's a case that you can make for and against him, and I don't think that anybody can confidently say what's going to happen on Black Monday if the Dolphins are not in the playoffs.
Yeah, of course. Well, on today's episode, we're going to be taking a look again at the run game. We've had, some episodes of what's gone right with the run game, what's going wrong with the run game. Uh, Today, we're going to be taking a look at some of the execution misses along the run game, what the issues are, and what the fix will be. And throughout this offseason, if the Dolphins even make the playoffs or if they don't, the biggest thing for us here at the Scouting Combine is what is the offensive line going to look like? What's this offense going to look like? What's this defense going to look like? How do they fix these issues so that way it doesn't carry over into next season?
Yeah, and part of the thing that we're talking about today is, in this week's press conference, Frank Smith had mentioned, the question came up, what was different between the 49ers game and the Cleveland game? And Frank Smith was mentioning that, a lot of these plays are, not just a complete failure on the play. Sometimes it's one thing, right? And it's not always one person. I know we'd all like to just say it's Liam Eichenberg or it's the guards, and if we just throw these guards in the trash and bring some big nasty guys in, that everything's fixed. But that's not always the case. But you do see when you really break it down that a lot of these runs are just one small player executing a little bit better, that these could be some big plays. And the challenge then comes to how do we get there? Austin Jackson getting injured really hurt things because, that's a player that changes the margins. Like, margins in the NFL are small.
Razor thin.
And, when you have Jackson, that creates a little bit more movement on the edge, then you can afford a little less movement from the interior guys. But when you lose a guy like that, you lose Armstead on the other side, here and there, then, those margins reduce and things look a little uglier. So they got to find a way to be able to manage that. But, it's not all just having players that suck in there, right? There's some plays that, like Frank Smith said, were really close to busting for big gains. And if we can, clean some stuff up against the Jets and hopefully going forward, then maybe we can see some of those actually pop out for those explosive plays that we've been missing.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and take a look at the X's and the O's, Coach. We'll go ahead and break it down.
All right. Let's see. All right. So this is going to be the first play. So this was in the first quarter. This was 8:14 to go in the first quarter. And on this one, this is going to be a outside zone to the left. And what we're going to get here is that everybody else except for Durham Smythe looks like they're looking for this to cut back up, right? You've got Teron Armstead here. He's blocking his guy out. Brewer is chasing that linebacker. But then on the outside here, you've got Durham Smythe who is blocking his guy into the play here, right? And, had Durham, you can see he kind of takes a step inside there on the corner of the screen here and then gets into a position where he's walling it off. And you can see that everybody else is trying to wash everything out. And Durham is taking his guy and blocking him back in. So this is a case where, had Durham just kind of sat there and let that guy run over top of him and just let him go to the outside, then this is a play that as we look at it here, right about here, this play is opening up real nicely, except for the fact that Durham Smythe is sitting here and blocking his guy directly back into this play.
Right. It looks like, just from this personal standpoint, you have 13 personnel. You got three tight ends on the field. You got Jonnu Smith, Durham Smythe, Julian Hill. We see Jonnu get into that motion. They're dressing it up as a potential pass play, right? You have Devon Achane as your running back. You have Robert Jones and Isaiah Wynn as your guards. You have Kendall Lamb and Teron Armstead in the game. Usually runs over to the left with Teron Armstead. The Dolphins are a little bit successful. They're able to get around 3.7 to 4 yards per carry running to Teron Armstead's side. Now, on this play, if you slow it down a little bit, as Julian Hill motions out, you have the strong side of the formation on the left-hand side, and then you have Jonnu motioning again one more time, and then you snap the ball. All right. Once the ball is snapped, okay, it's a toss play, right? It seems like a crack toss play with Durham Smythe coming inside, trying to stonewall his man, but he blocks him again into space. So what needs to happen is Durham Smythe needs to move his guy out of the way, outside of the lane, so that way Devon Achane can burst right through it. Missed execution on Durham Smythe's part right there that pretty much blows up the play. And this play right here is pretty much a microcosm of the run game. Like it's little things like that that impact the play. When we talk about Devon Achane, this season, we're like, this guy used to go for runs like he's a home run hitter, right? Like, what the heck is going on? He's expected to get at least 4 to 5 yards per carry, and even taking a look at some of his insights, he averages the most expected yards per carry, which is around 4.9, but he's averaged the 12th fewest actual yards per carry, which is 4.1 among 42 running backs with at least 100 carries this season. He generated the second most rushing yards over expected last season during his rookie season, and he's generating the second fewest rushing yards over expected. So it's not a Devon Achane issue. It's not a running back issue. It's the skill players and the offensive line. They're missing their executions on a much greater form compared to last season.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have one that we're going to go over. I think there is room for, or maybe we won't, but there is room for Achane to be better. There was a screen early in the game that actually, from a box score perspective, was recorded as a run, and there was an opportunity on that for Achane to turn up and get more yards early, but he tried to bounce it outside. I think only ended up as a 1 yard gain. So like you said, it's not just one thing, right? It is a lot of things that just kind of add up. So moving forward here, so this is in quarter two. This is 12:49 to go, and this is going to be it's an outside zone to the right again. And what happens on this one is Brewer is not able to get around and get to that linebacker. You can see that Ingold's leading up through that hole, and that Achane starts downhill in that direction, but that linebacker flashes. Achane ends up having to bounce that outside. And the reason that Brewer is not able to get to it, if my screen will refresh here, um, if we watch the combo block between Eichenberg and Brewer here, right? Typically on an outside zone, you would see Brewer trying to take over this block, and Eichenberg would take this half of the man. As that linebacker is scraping over the top, it would be Eichenberg scraping off to that linebacker. But one of the things that the Dolphins do is that they've had Brewer trying to circle around that linebacker or circle around the defensive tackle and chase that linebacker, and it has worked. We saw him do it sometimes with Connor Williams last year as well. But in this particular instance, you can see that that path that Brewer has to take is the reason that he's not able to get to that block. But yet again, this is, one block away from being a big play. As we look at this here, if we could have cut number 30 off there, we're looking at a big lane right there that A-Chain could
Mhm.
have been running through for an explosive, almost 50-yard run with just a safety in between.
Right. Taking a look at this play one more time, when you're seeing Brewer get up to the second level beforehand, once the motion comes through with Julian Hill, they're motioning out, but it's also a little bit of a late shift into the gap because that linebacker is able to flow into the gap where the opening is. It gives the linebacker an extra step, which is why Brewer isn't able to get there. Brewer, for as fast as he is, for as quick as he is, it's still a weird angle for him to take through because number one, he bumps into 94, and number 30, he's just going straight downhill. Like nobody gets his hands on him. Nobody gets his hands on him. And the thing is, if you could go back to where Ingold stops, like if you stop right there, one more time, we'll run the play. Keep going, keep going. And we'll stop right there. Okay. We know the responsibility is okay, you have to take your outermost man right there. But in this play, is in this instant, if that hole is opening up, Alec Ingold should be taking number 30. Julian Hill should be taking over number 58 right there to go ahead and put those blocks on there. The only guy left to beat right there is number 12. Aaron Brewer can get his hands onto number 9, Grant Delpit. That's coming down. And the other offensive lineman, I believe that's Robert Jones. Robert Jones can get his hands on number 12, which is coming around and just block him, stonewall him, and keep that lane open. Again, in hindsight, reviewing this film, that's what could have happened. And I'm assuming Frank Smith, Butch Berry, and even Mike McDaniel are going like, maybe we need to change this design right here because it didn't work out. The linebacker was able to get into the gap. The defense was able to read it after the motion. Now, how do we change it or how do we coach it and teach it better?
Yeah, I mean, I think that from a individual assignment perspective, right? I think they all did go to the right defenders on this.
Mhm.
But like you said, this late shift is something that we have talked about them having trouble with before. And if we look at this, the calls are being made now up front, right? And if we look at these alignments right now, you can understand why Brewer and Eichenberg, you know, who would have been responsible for the defensive tackle and number 30, why they would have made that call the way they did now, right? But as this motion comes, you know, right now, as this guy is shifting, they should be adjusting to where Brewer is taking over 94 and Eichenberg is climbing here. And that just doesn't happen. All right. And I don't know why, because like I said, we've seen this all season that these late shifts are messing with the combination calls. And whether it's that they're unable to adjust late or that they're just, they don't understand how to get out of the calls, like something has to change going forward. We're
So
using
why
these
don't
motions
they just not
trying
use the
to.
motions? Why don't they just not use the
Right,
motions
that
and
and
run
that's
the
what I was
play
gonna
as
say, like,
is?
at some point, right, we're trying to use these motions to our advantage, but and they should be able to predict that these guys are going to shift with it and make the appropriate calls with that, but that's not happening. And more often than it should, these motions are putting us into bad situations with stuff like this.
Yep, exactly. I agree. Like, just run the play as is. The Dolphins run motion, um, a lot, like a lot. When you take a look at their statistical insights and stuff like that, they've used motion 83.2% of the time, which is the second most in the NFL at the snap. Um, they use multiple motions, almost 68% of the time, which is also second most in the NFL. And right here, which we're seeing the pistol formation at, they use it almost 17% of the time, specifically 16.6%, which is the third most, again, in the NFL. They're top three in terms of motions, in terms of, you know, utilizing it in the pistol, utilizing multiple motions and motions at the snaps. Uh, they kind of decreased it from the pistol from 22% to 17%, in from 2024 to 2023, especially this pistol formation when they're running the ball. So I think the key and maybe the next evolution is, instead of trying to dress up for specific plays, just run the play as is, make it simple. Like, in the locker room, I'm sure there's some type of, schematic, acronym or other acronyms, just keep things simple. One thing Alf was mentioning was the acronym KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Just
Yep.
keep it simple. It's like Mike McDaniel's trying to outsmart everyone else. And it's like, okay, you're going to do this. We'll just do that then. You're going to zig, we're going to zag, and we'll try to beat you with this.
Yeah, I agree completely. And those are both, the keep it simple, stupid, right? And the fact that McDaniel feels the need to be the smartest guy on the field when it's not always necessary, are both things, that I've mentioned with him as a frustration as well. So here we're going to move to, this is going to be again second quarter, 12-10 left, and this one's going to be a bit more clear as to where the failure was, and that's going to be that Rob Jones here, again, number 30 is, our problem child here. But as Jones is releasing here, right? So the combination here is going to be that Jones and Brewer are responsible for this one technique in number 30 here. And, you know, in this situation, I feel like, we got to trust Brewer to be able to take care of this because we know that Jones is not the greatest athlete. We can't use that same combination that we saw with Eichenberg and Brewer, right? But so Jones has to take more of a horizontal departure here to try to get on this angle. He gets a little too far vertical, and being the limited athlete that he is, just that one step right there puts him out of position that he's not even able to get there and wash out number 30, right?
Nope.
It's going to be tough for him to cut him off. With the athlete that Jones is, right, getting out here and cutting him off to the point that we're able to run down this lane is unlikely. But if Jones takes a better
Angle, yeah.
path off the snap here, right, instead of that foot getting vertical, right, if we're stepping more horizontal like everybody else is, then maybe we can at least get hands on him here and wash him out so that lane is opening up there, right? Even though we're not getting Eichenberg up to number 12 on the backside here, if Jones can get hands on number 30 and wash him to the outside here, that at least opens up the lane this way that A-Chain can try to use his speed to make something happen.
That's an automatic 4 yards right there for A-Chain before
Yep.
before he even has hands on him. There's been a lot of talk about the Dolphins moving on from Liam Eichenberg and Robert Jones, just overhauling this guard position. Robert Jones may not be the perfect fit. He's certainly trying his best, and you could see it on film. He might be a step too slow. he might be taking the wrong step. Same with Liam Eichenberg as well. But is there anybody else in the market that can help the Dolphins, not have these missed executions on a variety basis?
So I think that Jones, in my grading, has executed at a high level of doing what is asked of him. He doesn't have the embarrassing losses that Eichenberg does. He doesn't have the dominant plays, but from a play to play basis, most plays, this is what I would consider a really bad play for Jones, right? And it's not the worst play that you could ever have. Uh, I feel like the problem that we're having right now is that every offensive line is going to have that one guy that fans are going to complain about, right? And good offensive lines even have that guy, but when you have four other guys around them, you can really mask that. And in my opinion, a good example of that is in Philadelphia with Mekhi Becton right now. I was watching him, looking at him as a possible free agent target for the Dolphins, and I wasn't overly impressed with Becton by himself, but because of the talent that's around him, the mistakes that he makes are masked much better. So when we look at the Dolphins offensive line, you look at guys, like a Liam Eichenberg, like a Rob Jones, and throw a Kendall Lamb in there. And, if you have one of those guys on your offensive line, you can usually make up for that. And you can still have a very good performance in those, the minor issues like this here kind of get masked. But when you get two of those guys, or in the Dolphins case right now, three of them in the lineup at the same time, that's when these things really get magnified.
Right. If you take a look at this Dolphins offensive line, they really only have, if you take a look at the offensive lines and the players across the NFL, they really only have one quality starter, which is center Aaron Brewer. Teron Armstead has been in and out of the lineup with injuries. Patrick Paul, he's still learning the game. He's a rookie. Austin Jackson, he's a starter in this league, but he's also hurt. You could argue that Liam Eichenberg and Robert Jones are capable backups, but they're not necessarily starter quality on most offensive lines in the NFL.
Yep. So next one here, we're still in quarter two. This is going to be 8:46. So this is actually going to be more of a screen in the box score. It shows up as a run, right? And had we popped this for a big play, then it would show up in the rushing numbers. But on this play, what we're going to get is that there's a nice wall that is developing to the outside of this play. And the one thing that messes that up as we slow this down is going to be that we're developing this wall on the outside here. We've got Brewer that should be able to get around the edge here, getting down to this defensive back in what could have been, what is that, 65-yard touchdown that would have gone in the books as a run play because the ball traveled backwards when he caught it. But here we have Durham Smythe not able to get this block, right? So rather than Brewer being able to get around the edge here to 21, he's got to slow down and help clean that up. You can see that Achane then has to adjust to that as well. Whereas, if Brewer is able, or I'm sorry, Smythe is able to get onto his block the same way that Malik Washington is there. Not sure who that one is there. Maybe might be Johnny. I don't know. But if Smythe can get on the block the same way that those two are, then we've
That's
got
Craycraft in
Aaron
Washington.
Brewer.
Yeah.
Craycraft, yep. So if Smythe can get on his block the same way that Craycraft and Washington are, then Aaron Brewer is going around that wall almost like is developing like an old school punt return where he'd set up that wall along the sideline and just be able to run down the sideline. But we'd have Brewer at full speed, right? And all he's got to do is run through number 21, and then it's just a foot race for Achane down the sideline.
Can you put it on the sideline view so that way everyone can see as well how this play, what this play is supposed to look like, and what actually developed from there? So that way, like it would be easier to see on like a TV screen and a sideline view because right here in this personnel, you're an 11, right? The Dolphins aren't necessarily the best team running 11 personnel, and ever since Austin Jackson was injured, they have been the worst team in the NFL running the dang ball, 32nd in almost all types of rushing success and rushing EPA. They're like 26th on early down runs, and they're last in the league on late down runs as well. So this screen game is an extension of the run game in sense because they can't run the dang ball, man.
Yeah. So yeah, look at the sideline view here. You can see that, basically Craycraft is there keeping his guy inside the numbers. Same thing with um, Washington, and then you get Smythe unable to keep his guy inside the numbers, right? Where right now we should have everything basically creating a wall along those numbers
Mhm.
with Brewer coming out here to the outside, getting to this defensive back, and A-Chain just being able to run behind that wall on this play.
The Dolphins really need a big slot type of guy that can block well, like a Jackson Hawes, like Trey Harris from Ole Miss, like Jack Betch from TCU. Just some guys that, I've done a little bit of work on throughout the draft that can catch routes, that can run routes pretty decently in this passing scheme, and who are willing blockers in the run game that can also line up wide and handle man-to-man blocking.
All right, then last one here. So this is going to be late in the game. This is fourth quarter. This is 3 minutes, 56 seconds left in the game. I think the game was pretty well in hand by this point, but it's still another opportunity that, could have gotten a 20-yard touchdown run out of this. But as we watch the way that this one develops, I want to slow this down once it stops clocking here. I want you to keep your eyes on Kendall Lamb here. And so when we talk about
Oh man.
assignments here,
Ah man, I
so
saw it. I saw I ah
so we're gonna
that
have
that could have been so much better.
for the combo blocks here, we've got Smythe and Julian Hill. They're responsible for this defensive end and number 9. And then Eichenberg and Lamb had the defensive tackle and number 43. And then basically on the backside here, Jones and Brewer technically responsible for the backside defensive tackle and our good friend number 30 here.
Devin Bush.
I mean, Devin Bush. Okay, that makes sense. Devin Bush is a
He
good
was
player. I remember him
wrecking the,
coming
the
out.
run game the entire night, man.
But so as they're releasing here, right, everybody's taking a solid angle here, right? And Lamb ends up helping Julian Hill a little bit, and we see his guy 43 here. This is where
Muhammad
he should be,
Diabate.
where Lamb should be pressing out to, because we've got Brewer back here. He's coming for Devin Bush, right? But for whatever reason, Lamb also goes to Devin Bush, where Brewer is as well. And number 43 is able to knife in there and to make that play, right? So another example here that, if Kendall Lamb continues on that combination blocks, gets number 43, right? Brewer will continue and get Devin Bush there. And we're looking at a lane right there that, hopefully, Wilson just has to make number 1 miss. And we're looking at a 20-yard touchdown to close out the game here. So this is just another one of those examples where we have 2 of our linemen. It may, this could be an issue with the shift again too, right? There's the guys that are shifting over again. Maybe Lamb thinks that everything is bumping over one because of that. But, the end result is that we have 2 of our offensive linemen on one linebacker where another linebacker is unblocked and making the tackle here.
I feel like, I mean, we came up with one solution already. Like you're doing one motion and then you do another motion and then you snap the ball. You're trying to dress it up as either a pass or a run. You want to keep the defense guessing, but it's like, okay, the linebackers are going to come downhill regardless. You're playing with Tyler Huntley. Uh, the Browns aren't necessarily respecting the pass so much, and they just want to stop the run. Now, up against this New York Jets team, they play the pass pretty well, and they can play the run decently as well. I feel like one solution would be, if they want to make the playoffs for sure on their end, they want to take care of business on their end, get rid of the second motion and snapping the ball. Run the second motion, let them set, then run the damn ball. Like you take a look at the shifts, you're like, okay, now Aaron Brewer is able to call it, he's able to set it, he's able to set the protections. You're like, okay, now they're set. This is the way the play design is going to go. This is the way we need to block these guys and minimize those potential mistakes that we've been seeing on film.
Yeah, I agree. And this kind of goes back to, we talked about when Tua originally left the lineup about how McDaniel needed to be able to simplify the game plan, for Skylar Thompson, and then also the same for Tyler Huntley, that we had to get rid of some of that stuff because I don't even know that all these motions they're created for a quarterback like Tua to be able to use those as tools before the snap to eliminate certain routes based on the coverages to get the defense to reveal everything. And when you're looking at, Tyler Huntley is doing a great job as a backup quarterback, but he doesn't have that grasp of the offense. So I'm not
He
sure that
doesn't have
he's
a
even
2-year grasp like Tua
right.
does.
So I doubt that Tyler Huntley is getting the full benefit from all of the motions that we're still running. And then we have the constant shuffle of the offensive line where, this entire season we've only had one time where we went a full 2-game spread with the same 5 guys in the line. And we talk about continuity all the time. And when you don't have that continuity, you know, you can't just keep doing the same things. The same way that we needed to simplify the offense for the backup quarterbacks, we need to do the same thing for the running game as well. That when we have a lot of, pieces that are changing in and out, we should be getting rid of more of these motions so we don't see those late shifts that are clearly every single week causing issues in the run game. So, I think that obviously there is a personnel perspective to it. The Rob Jones ones that we looked at was, that wasn't a shift type issue. That was a poor step and that type of thing, right? The Durham Smythe one, that is just Durham needs to be able to seal his guy better to create that alley. But, when you have those type of things, you got to do stuff to help them. And by simplifying it and making those pre-snap reads easier on them would go a long way towards helping them, in my opinion.
It definitely will, and maybe they make that adjustments against the New York Jets, but I highly doubt that they'll just make an adjustment for the season finale. But if they do win this game, they want a little bit of a change up. If they do make the playoffs in Buffalo, this is something that you're gonna have to do. You're going up into Buffalo. Buffalo has played you twice already. You haven't won in Buffalo in a while. They know your offense. Uh, they are not good up against the run, so declare your run and run it. When I take a look at some of these metrics on declared runs, the Dolphins are still 32nd in EPA, 32nd in success rate, and it's like, man, and I think it is tied back with the motions. It's tied back with the shifts. They're able, these NFL players, linebackers, and defensive linemen, they've been playing ball for what, more than 5, 6, 7 years, dating. Like even if you're,
Yeah.
a rookie or second year player from high school and college, you know your gap assignments by now. Within the first year or so, you know what the gaps are. You know what the angles are going to take a look like. You use your physicality and athleticism to go through it, and that's what these players are doing. For a guy like Muhammad Diabate, that last week we saw, not the best at holding his blocks, but he's a smaller linebacker, shiftier, faster, and he's able to get around and use those angles and make those play like he did. He was able to knife through and tackle Jeff Wilson for just a measly 2-yard gain.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean that, something to think about going, don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, right? But on the off chance that we are able to make the playoffs and we do make that trip to Buffalo, Buffalo is one of the toughest places to play in the NFL. Those fans are rowdy. It is loud the entire game there. We go to games in Miami and fans get loud on third down. It's a tough place to play on third downs. Buffalo is a tough place to play every single down. They don't sit in that stadium. They are up and yelling the entire time. And, as familiar as Tua is with the offense, he'll be returning after a couple of weeks of being off, right? So, we can't expect to be able to go into a loud stadium with Tua returning from injury and coming back into the lineup and just be able to throw all these motions out there and expect everybody to be on the same page. So, like I said, don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but if they want a chance to go up there and be successful, then I think that that's going to be one of the adjustments. The less motions and just lining up and running is going to be one of those adjustments they have to be able to make to give themselves a chance and to eliminate or greatly reduce those pre-snap penalties.
Well, coach, I gotta say, I've learned a lot about offensive line play. Learned a lot about the zone system, what the running back should be doing, how the play design is supposed to be, and the individual responsibilities that I'm able to get a grasp. And, hopefully our listeners are able to as well. It's not just like a simple hot take. Oh, yeah, our guards are trash. Replace them. Like, there needs to be refinement. There needs to be fine tuning. Yes, some personnel needs to be changed, but it's also like coaching is there, but the players need to execute also a little bit better. It's a combination. It's a mix of everything. And hopefully the Dolphins win against the Jets and Carson Wentz is able to pull something, magical and beat the Denver Broncos. And then we're talking about playoffs in Buffalo for another year.
That would be nice.
That would be nice, and hopefully they actually make it a fight and potentially win if they do. But again, let's not get ahead of ourselves. As always, y'all stick with us here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network, here on the Scouting Combine. Go Fins, everybody.